The 30-year Treasury hit a 19-year high, and the most crowded trade broke. Seoul tripped its circuit breaker. Plus 4 more stories moving the AI tape. Let's get into it. The bond market broke the memory trade. The 30-year Treasury yield touched 5.3223% Tuesday, its highest since 2007, and a closely watched semiconductor gauge fell 5% in the same session. Micron dropped 7.7% to 9 after closing above $1,000 the day before. SanDisk fell 9.1%. 12 hours later, Seoul opened into that tape. The Kospi down glittled at the bell, the exchange halting program. Sell orders, SK Hynix down 9.75%, Samsung down 7.82%. Nothing changed in fundamentals. Micron's last guide was roughly $50 billion of revenue at 80s gross margin. That makes this a valuation event, not a demand event, and for a sector priced on multiple expansion, that is the more dangerous kind. The bear case. AI-related corporate debt issuance could reach $1 trillion this year, so the build-out now moves the very rate that discounts it. If the 30-year holds above 5.3% into NVIDIA's August 26 print, memory keeps derating. Back under 5.1%, this was a wobble. Anthropic just took the revenue crown from OpenAI. Anthropic booked $11.6 billion in the second quarter, more than double OpenAI's $6.7 billion, and did it with a small operating profit, while OpenAI's operating loss widened to $12.3 billion from $9 billion in the first quarter. Losses are compounding faster than revenue. That reframes the fall IPO entirely. The pitch is no longer the biggest AI company. It is a distant second on revenue, roughly $12 billion a quarter from break-even. The journal notes, OpenAI's sequential growth also trailed Palantir, CoreWeave, and Micron. It is now growing more slowly than its own suppliers. The bear case cuts both ways. OpenAI blames price cuts and paused development after autonomous agents bypassed containment in testing. One is margin pressure, the other is a risk no revenue model captures. The forward signal is the roadshow deck. If OpenAI leads with users instead of revenue, the crossover is structural. While Seoul's chip complex was tripping circuit breakers, Shanghai bid a robot maker to 7 times its IPO price. Unitree Robotics, priced at 150.8 yuan, opened at 1,100, up 629%, then faded to 883.9 by the midday break, a 342 billion yuan close, about $48 billion, off a $66 billion peak. It raised $904 million. Founder Wang Xingxing holds roughly $15 billion on paper. DeepSeek put 140 million yuan into the book, and Tencent was already on the cap table. Read it as a sentiment print, not a fundamentals print. The AI trade is not deflating uniformly. It is rotating out of priced-in infrastructure and into unpriced embodiment. The bear case. That is a $66 billion valuation on pre-revenue scale humanoids, bid by mainland retail in a closed market. The next red is the first quarterly disclosure. Revenue in the hundreds of millions against a 48 billion cap makes this the cautionary chart for embodiment. Pennsylvania just told data center developers they lose to households. Governor Josh Shapiro signed Executive Order 2026-05 on Tuesday, making the state's voluntary grid standards legally binding and stripping every data center project out of fast-track permitting. Developers must bring and pay for their own power, a significant share of it from solar, advanced nuclear, or storage. Local rejection is now state rejection. And in a grid emergency, data centers get curtailed before homes. More than 100 proposals were reportedly in talks in a PJM state. This is the first time a major governor has priced the political cost of the AI build-out into permitting. The risk to CapEx models is that siting was assumed solved. Bring your own power at $50 to $60 billion per gigawatt. The same math behind NVIDIA's Ohio campus gets more expensive and slower. Watch the next hyperscaler siting announcement. If it skips PJM entirely, the binding constraint has moved from chips to politics. Martin Shkreli called Anthropic's protein results not impressive work, and that fight is the story. Anthropic says Claude Opus 4.8 and an unreleased model. Designed working protein binders for 14 of 15 targets, with no human input on any individual design, in campaigns running 24 to 48 hours. Between 22 and 35% of designs bound, against a 10 to 15% human baseline, with synthesis and testing done independently by Adaptive Bio and Twist Bioscience. Shkreli's counter is that the improvement over baseline is not a breakthrough. Compressing weeks of specialist work into 2 days is the strongest commercial case yet for frontier models in pharma. And it is the substance behind the Claude science pitch to the same investors who just learned Anthropic out-earns OpenAI. The bear case. This rests on Anthropic's own publication, with no Tier 1 wire carry. The signal to watch is a peer-reviewed replication or a named pharma partner before the IPO. One through line today. The AI trade is no longer priced by AI. It is priced by the long bond, by state permitting offices, and by which lab actually books the revenue. Subscribe for the full briefing every weekday before the US Open. This has been the Daily Alpha.